Hey, you're here with Dr. Jodi, and this is season 3 of Anxiety, I'm So Done With You. This podcast is a teen and a young adult guide to ditching toxic stress and hardwiring your brain for happiness. If you're new here, grab a copy of my book, Anxiety, I'm So Done With You, because this series goes section by section through the book, going a little bit deeper, giving more examples, and telling more stories. Season 3, which goes along with Chapter 3, is expanding hope by looking at your skills and abilities. You are amazing. You have many skills and abilities. However, anxiety does not want you to know that, and it tries to block your view of them. But not anymore. In this season, we're going to bring them out into the open, giving you more access to them when you need them the most. And as this season progresses, you're going to envision yourself in a new way. As a person who is able, caring, confident, and determined. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and leaving me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Mental health problems are skyrocketing, especially among young people, and this series will help them cease judging, stop questioning, and start healing. Welcome to Chapter 3, Section 6, Activate Courage. In this episode, we will talk risks and risk-taking. We'll define your comfort zone and get into how it's created and how you can change it. We'll discuss that thing that holds you back from taking risks that I haven't even mentioned yet in this series. And then I'm going to help you paint a picture of what's on the other side of taking risks that I don't think you want to live without. All right, let's get right into it. First, let's define risks, because you wouldn't need courage if there were no risks. So I want to demystify risks for you so you feel in control of your decisions instead of fear being in control of them. A risk is the chance of something happening that will have a negative effect. It is someone or something that creates or suggests a hazard. So what's a hazard? A hazard is a source or a situation with the potential for harm in terms of human injury or ill health, damage to property, damage to the environment, or something like that. That means risks and hazards show potential for harm that necessitates your caution. In other words, you have to be aware of them and be conscious of how you navigate them as you move forward with your decisions. What's important to remember is that not all risks are created equal. There are different levels of risks that people have to consider. The level of risk is related to 2 things: how likely the unwanted event is and how bad the potential negative consequences of that might be. So you have to weigh all of the variables of these 2 things to figure out the level of risk. For example, let's look at the risk of falling in when you're walking across a log that's over a stream. What's the level of risk here? Well, you have to consider all of the variables. For example, the likelihood of falling in increases or decreases depending on the thickness or flatness of the log and your experience or agility walking across a rounded surface. The potential negative consequences depend on the temperature outside, what you are wearing, whether or not you are already wet, how high the log is suspended, and more. All decisions involve some risk. But sometimes it's so low that the answer is just clear. Like, should I brush my teeth? Yeah, you have to get out of bed and it'll take some time and you're very, very tired. But it is really good for you to brush your teeth and your mouth will feel so much better if you do it. For those kind of decisions, you might need some effort, but not really courage to do it. They're integrated. You don't really think of them as risky. You might think of them as a pain to have to do it, but you don't think of it as risky. Other times, the risk is high, but the desire is worth it. So you do need to have some courage to get outside that comfort zone. For example, the risk of telling someone that you like them. You have to consider all of the variables. First, you'll consider the likeliness of being rejected by trying to guess if they return your affections. Then you would consider how embarrassing it would be, or if things would be awkward between the two of you, or worse, they'd be mean to you after you said something. Or maybe you'd worry that everybody in the school would be laughing at you, or it would ruin your friendship. All of these and maybe more would go through your mind and will help you decide whether to take the risk or not. When you approach a decision like this, you can do nothing, which also carries a risk of losing the opportunity to date that other person. Or you could decide to do it, then gather the courage and mitigate the risks. Mitigate means somehow making them less severe, less serious, or less painful. We'll talk about gathering courage soon, but let's first go over mitigating the risks. You do that with something called controls. So, what are controls? Controls are measures or actions or things that you put in place to decrease the likelihood of that negative thing happening or the negative consequences of that event. For example, if that log over the stream had a branch from a neighboring tree that you could hold onto and balance yourself while you walk over, it would mitigate the risks of you falling in, and it might help you make the decision to cross there. Or when you ask your friends if they think the person that you want to date might like you too, that might give you some information to decide whether to tell them how you feel or not. All right, now that we're on the same page with levels of risk and controls, let's talk about courage. I start this section with an illustration of 3 circles inside of each other. In the center circle is your comfort zone. And in the middle circle is risks, worries, and discomforts. And in the biggest circle, it says everything worthwhile. Obviously, some things worthwhile don't seem like they have any risks. While there are always risks, sometimes they're so small that they don't even matter, or they're so integrated that they're discarded. It's like having a pet. You might have had your dog forever and have integrated the work that you have to put in to that relationship. And you might have integrated, or you don't think about so much those sacrifices that you make to care for them, or the risks of getting hurt when you lose them. So it's comfortable to have your pet. But if you were deciding whether to get a new pet or not, and that decision was yours, then you would weigh the risks and the benefits because that would be something new. When you have integrated a new thing, you have overcome the worry, risk, or discomfort it took you to get there, and your circle widens. The circle's still there, but it's not an obstacle for that event anymore or that experience anymore because now you're familiar and used to it. So much so that you don't even see those activities as risky anymore. Comfort zones are different for everyone, depending on how they see risks or how they evaluate risks, what they're used to, what their past experiences are, what kind of support they have in their life, and what they're most afraid of. Comfort zones don't get established and just stay the same forever. They're constantly changing, getting bigger and smaller. A desire or a mood can change how someone weighs a risk and a benefit in a moment. One day we might not be up for something, and the next day we totally are. It happens all the time. So that might make you wonder how a comfort zone gets started in the first place. A lot of times it starts from something simple because one day you have that calorie-conserving resistance to something in your life, and then you don't understand that that's why you have that resistance, and you put meaning around it as if it's something that you don't want to do or would make you uncomfortable doing or make you feel trapped if you did it. Or you've had a negative experience with that kind of thing or something similar to it. It could have been a very bad event, which makes sense. A bad experience would make you weary to do that again. But also mildly bad events, when you've been embarrassed or something, can also build up really strong comfort zones. Intense embarrassment can feel humiliating and be experienced by your body and your mind as traumatic anyway. And once those parameters are set on your comfort zone, you make more and more meaning out of them until they feel quite impassable. In fact, some people's comfort zones are very rigid. There are some things that they have been a hard no to for a very long time, and in some cases, they may have forgotten the real reason for that. Just the fact that it is the edge of the comfort zone is all that matters, and it keeps them in there. They think that it's scary, period, but never ask themselves, why is it scary? If you feel like this is you, or you're in any kind of position where you want to push out the boundaries of your comfort zone, try these 4 steps. The first one is find your edge. It's good to have conscious awareness of what's inside and outside of your comfort zone. This gives you the most control to dismantle what you can immediately. You want to ask the anxiety, why? Why does it say that will be awful? Why does it think you can't handle it? Why does it think something bad would happen? Do not let it be evasive. You want to know the ins and the outs because that unpacks and dismantles the anxiety. The second step is to weigh the risks and the benefits. Remember, the level of risk is related to the likelihood of the negative consequence happening and how negative the consequence is or can be. You want to think of all of the variables so you could be prepared and make a conscious decision. Then you want to list the benefits of doing that. Why do you want to do it? How great are the benefits? Will they last long? Are they worth the risks? For example, showing off to someone who really doesn't care about you is not worth doing something dangerous. But staying up late one night to finish a homework assignment is worth the risk of getting less than optimal sleep that night. Next, the third step is to brainstorm the controls. This is thinking of what you can do to minimize the risks. It's like having an exit plan when you're nervous about going somewhere. You could go somewhere and have the opportunity to be at that event without feeling like you'll be trapped there, so you're minimizing the discomforts. And finally, in step 4, you will need to gather your courage to take a step in the direction that you want, that you've decided. With all of this information, you consciously make a decision how to move forward, and then you need the courage to do that. Courage is trust in yourself. Being an impulsive thrill seeker is not courage, it is just stupid. Real courage is trusting your skills to assess the situation, weigh the risks and the benefits, brainstorm the controls, and make a conscious decision what will be the best way forward. After watching people go through this process for a really long time, there is one thing that I notice that holds people back from taking risks. And that is thinking that being ready is tangible, that you'd feel it and know beyond a doubt that you're ready. That's not how it works. Ready is hardly ever tangible like that. Either there's something that's easy and you do it because it's integrated into your system, like you put a shirt on without really thinking if you're ready to do that or not. However, so many people feel like they're not ready, and then they think that means that they are not ready. No one feels ready when they have to do something challenging. They either start without thinking about it too much or start before they have total confidence, knowing that they will get confidence from it or as they go. Not feeling ready makes you hesitate, and then the brain thinks something's wrong and the monkey does its thing. A good example of this are some teens that I work with who have trouble getting themselves to school, and they assume that they'll go when they're ready. They're not ready to go, they think. I'm not ready to go. But they're never going to be ready until after they go and have been going regularly, because then it integrates into their system that they're okay going. We think ready means comfortable, and what makes things comfortable is familiarity. That's because anxiety can't lie to you about something that you know well. It can't hack it. The fastest way to get over the fear of something, like driving a car or speaking in public, is to do it until it's familiar. Let's talk about what is on the other side of our comfort zone. And that's going to be different for everyone because it's up to your personal taste or your personal preference, what you think is fun and fulfilling. Who are the people in your life that you want to be close to? What would mean success to you? What lifts you up and what excites you? Take a moment now to think about what is important to you. Think about a time in your future and imagine this coming true and you being comfortable and happy there. What would it be like to experience that? This episode is almost over, and when it's done, I want you to grab a piece of paper and do the 4-step process that we spoke about in this episode with this thing that you're visualizing. The first step is to find your edge. Really get clear on what's inside and outside your comfort zone around this. The second step is weigh the risks and the benefits. Think about the level of risks and how important this thing is to you. Step 3 is brainstorm your controls. How do you mitigate those risks so that you could achieve those benefits? And finally, step 4, gather your courage and take a step outside your comfort zone. Each step that you take will be the building block of the next step and the next step and the next step. It will build on your momentum and inertia and get you closer and closer to what you truly, truly desire. Fantastic. Thank you so much for listening to this episode where we went over risks and controls and how to be ready even if you don't feel ready. And I also shared my 4 steps to expanding your comfort zone. As always, on the blog that goes with this episode, I have more resources for you on building courage and taking risks. The link is in the show notes. I appreciate all the shares and the comments, and I'm indebted to you for those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Remember, I go live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Facebook and YouTube. And on YouTube and TikTok, you'll find me at Dr. Jodi, DOCTORJODI. The next episode is the last section of this chapter and the last episode of this season. Chapter 3, Section 7, Activate Your Unique Skills. Read or listen to that section, and I'll meet you there.